Good evening, everyone. Can someone give me a thumbs up if they can hear me online?
Everyone in the room, we're gonna have to be quieter than usual today because Tracy is gonna be broadcasting live from here for the beginner's lesson. So
Right.
silence in this room.
So welcome everyone online and in person at the Grant Visitor Center. My name is Tracy Klein and I'll be doing the beginning lesson. We've had a little technical glitch. We don't have the owl yet tonight. We will probably have it around 7 o'clock. So we'll be able to fix that when we get a break. So I'll go ahead and present the beginning lesson. Come on. All right, can everybody see that online? Give me a thumbs up, anybody? Anybody?
You have sound?
Yes, I have sound too. Excellent. Well, so it's almost blackberry season. Depending on which area you're at, they may have started blooming and they may not have even budded up yet. I went out to the Renton Highlands this morning and there are no buds even on the blackberries out there, but in Seattle/North Renton, they are already budded up and some are starting to bloom. So everybody's at a little bit different microclimate, but this will give you some ideas on what to do in when the blackberries actually do bloom in your area. All right, Marshall, can you give me a thumbs up if the slide advanced? Last time they didn't. You should be seeing, what are your goals? Wax production, honey production, or splits? Thumbs up, anyone? Can someone unmute and let me know if you can see the second slide?
I don't think it forwarded.
Did this last time too. Why is that, Dawn?
I think because it shows up on multiple screens and you have to try and grab the other one, whichever one that is.
All right, hang on, everybody. I was sharing the deck.
There we go. What are your goals? You got it.
Okay, but if I hit slide, can you see this? Can you see the slide?
No, I think I see your presenter deck.
Because you're sharing your desktop.
That's right. We'll just do this. All right, so perfect, thanks. We'll just go with this. All right, so we'll talk about wax production first. So you can have one, sometimes two of your goals, but not all three. So first, if you don't have any wax on your frames, that should be your goal. Or if you have wax in your honey suit or in your brood box, but no wax in your supers yet, then wax production should be your #1 goal. So wax is super expensive for bees to make. It takes around 10 pounds of honey to make only 1 pound of wax. So if you need wax, you can pretty much do the math pretty quickly to discover if I need a lot of wax, I'm not going to see a lot of honey. Okay, so if you feed 1-to-1 syrup, then that will greatly help your chances of getting a honey crop if you're starting with no wax. Doesn't guarantee it, and the blackberry flow is fickle. This year we had an amazing maple flow, and maybe we'll get a good blackberry flow this year. Last year it was terrible. So it really, you have to maximize the opportunity when it's there. So feeding 1-to-1 syrup continuously will help your bees make more wax. And if you stop feeding and then start feeding again, then the wax production isn't as high as it initially started at. So think about that as you're feeding. If you go on vacation, see if a friend can feed for you, or use a bigger feeder. The best way to get wax is either with your original package, because that's kind of like a swarm, or capture a swarm, because it always is mind-boggling to me just how fast a swarm can draw out a 10 frame deep full of wax. It takes about a week. And it seems like in any other circumstance, it could take half the summer to make that happen. So feed, feed, feed. If you forget anything else and you want to do wax production, remember, feed 1-to-1 sugar. And when I talk about sugar, for those of you that are new, that's just white plain sugar that you can get at Costco, or the chef store has it for cheap. And so do shop around.
May we ask a question?
Sure.
When we're talking about the production of wax versus honey, why would we do either? I mean, why would we? First of all, I know nothing.
So the question in the room is, why would we do one or the other? So if you have established colonies, you're probably wanting to get honey. That's probably your goal. If you have new colonies, your goal should be wax production. All right. So moving on to honey production, every year I show this slide, and it's the tale of 3 cities. So those bees all wintered over, and you want to maximize your workforce. So you can see the 2 boxes on the left-hand side are stacked pretty high because the workforce is large. So there's brood area and there's honey storage area. You have to think 2-dimensionally. So you have to make sure that there's enough room for the queen to keep laying brood, otherwise they'll swarm. Anybody have a guess as to why the box on the right-hand side is so much shorter? Because they swarmed.
Oh.
They sure did. So any beekeeper that tells you my bees have never swarmed is either A, lying, or B, they just didn't pay attention, they don't know. So yeah, they swarmed and they flew off into Dead Horse Canyon. So I got exactly 0 honey from that colony that year. Whereas the other ones, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 honey supers stacked on each, and they both produced a lot of honey. So I mentioned briefly earlier, you need to manage the space to prevent swarming. That's why. And that brood space is super important. People tend to think only about adding more honey storage space, but you can add all the honey storage space on top that you want, and the queen will not start at the bottom, walk through a super or 2 of honey and go lay on top of that. You have to have that brood space on the bottom. Depending on how you manage that, you either add more boxes or remove frames that are capped and put them into your smaller colonies to build them up, and then add a frame that's empty. So if you've got drawn comb, you can add an empty frame of drawn comb, they'll clean it up and the queen can lay in there right away. Or if you need an extra couple of frames for of wax, then you just add those. I usually put those in positions 3 or 7. And then during the blackberry flow, they'll fill those out in wax in a week, and then the queen will start laying, and then so on and so forth.
So if they haven't gotten to the edge frames, is that, because they seem to kind of work the middles?
Yep. So the question is, if they haven't gotten all the way out to the edge, no problem. You can actually move those frames that are on the edge into position 3-ish, or even 4 if you want, and then they'll fill those in. And then on the outside frame on the outside next to the box, they don't like to draw wax there. You can flip that around and just move that in and put it where all the 2-week-old bees are, and then they'll draw the wax.
I have another question. So the ratio of sugar, water to sugar, do you keep the reservoir in the hive all the time, or do you take it out?
Yeah, so the question in the room is, do you take your feeder out or do you leave it in? And personally, I use top feeders. So I don't have to worry about that extra space. But if you're using frame feeders, you might want to think about removing that during the blackberry season or putting an extra box with that and other frames in there. What you absolutely don't want to do during blackberry season is leave extra space. So if you accidentally, let's say, forget to put the 10th frame back in, and then you put your inner cover on, and then you put your lid on, and you go along your merry way, you come back next week, you try to get your inner cover out, and it's like, what the heck? And you pull it out, and there's a whole comb built on that where you forgot to put it. So the bees will fill that space. So especially during the blackberry season, try not to do that because it makes a mess, especially if it's 2 frames. Ask me how I know. Yeah, the question in the room is how often should we be checking our colonies? So during the blackberry flow, once a week. And we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so talking about brood space considerations, I did mention this, you want to continually have space for that queen to lay. So each week you want to have at least 2 frames in there if you're using deeps, 4 if you're using mediums for her to lay in. Now, remember, some brood is emerging and others, you know, are getting eggs laid in it, but I always leave 2 frames, 2 deep frames that are completely empty so that the queen will have room. And by the way, room does not include the frames that have no wax on them. They don't see that as space. So if you put 2 frames in there and it's everything else is clogged up and they haven't built wax on that yet, then they could start the swarming urge because the queen's out of space to lay eggs. And then, so an additional brood box might not hurt under, and that goes under the honey super. And then you want to give those frames of capped brood and the adhering nurse bees over to one of your smaller colonies, or put them in a nuke box and start a new queen. You just have to have eggs and some resources in there, and that will relieve the space needs for the time being. And then towards the end of at the end of blackberry season, you can do a newspaper combine and put those frames back if you want. Okay, so here's a question for you. Do I add frames or do I add another box or no? So on the left-hand side, that gives you a pretty good idea that those you don't add extra room because they already have plenty of room. The one on the top is a nuke box. You can see that the bees are crammed in there, and I do have a frame feeder in this box, and the bees are stuffed in the 4 frames that they have. So they will start the swarming prospects if I don't add space or take frames out to create more space. And then the box on the bottom right-hand side is a little more nebulous. All the frames are drawn in this, and the bees are covering 8 of the frames. So 7 to 8 of the frames covered and all the wax drawn out is the time to add another box. All right. So sure.
So if you have another box and you don't have drawn frames just sitting out, right now, using the blackberry flow, are they then going to be spending the first 2 weeks just drawing out those frames and
Right.
not getting any honey?
Yeah. So the question in the room is, let's say I only have 1 deep box with frames that are drawn out. You want 2. And if you're using mediums, you want 3 mediums for the brood space or 2 deeps. So if you add that second deep, let's say, on top, it's also a good idea. Think about your brood area as a football or a ball. You want it to be together. So if you pull out one of those capped or 2 of those capped frames and move them up into that second box, push your frames in, put your empties in the 3 and 7 position, and then you have the 2 capped brood on the second box and all the rest are undrawn, then they'll work on adding wax to those frames. And the question was, well, what about my honey? Well, you don't get both. You get one or the other. And they have to have the wax before they can store the honey anyway. And then if you extrapolate that on further, okay, now I've got my second brood box drawn out. Then I add my honey super, and it's all new frames. So, oops, still no honey because they have to make comb in that box to store it in. So that's why most of the time people say the first year you don't get a honey crop because those resources go to building wax instead. And then by the time that's all done, then the blackberries are usually over. And so you're on to wildflower honey or whatever else they can forage.
I saw
right, so-
previous
go ahead.
picture was green drone frame. I have a question. When you need to put that green drone frame from Varroamite control?
Yeah. So for everybody in the room here, the question online was, I have green drone frames that I want to use for Varroa control. When do I put those in? Now is an excellent time to do that and make sure that you're feeding, and they'll start drawing that out with the sugar water that you're giving them. And then the queen will start laying. If you're using those, make sure you mark on your box or mark a calendar reminder to pull that out before the drones emerge. A few emerge, no big deal, but if you forget and they all emerge, then you've just given yourself a Varroa bomb. So now is a great time to draw that wax out. And then what I do with mine at the end of the blackberry season, they pretty much won't make more drones anyway. I'll take those out, freeze them to kill any drones that are in there, and then I'll move them out to position 10, and then they'll fill them up, they'll backfill it with honey. And then they can use it for their winter storage, and I don't have to store the frames in my garage. Okay, so how to look for swarm cells. This is transitioning into making splits. So remember, you have to have wax, and you have to have a lot of bees in order to have a honey crop. But if you want to have more colonies, then you take away from your honey production by taking that workforce away. But during blackberry season is an excellent time to make splits because they tend to want to swarm anyway. And so what I do is I take my hive tool and I crack the back of the box up and I look underneath. So you can see in the picture on the top right-hand side, there's really no swarm cells, just a piece of paper that got stuck in my picture. I don't know why. So that colony has not even any queen cups going. A queen cup is a dry cup. There's no egg in it. A queen cell actually has an egg in it. So if you look at the picture on the bottom right-hand side, you can see there are swarm cells there, and some of them are capped. Oops. So once they're capped, the queen's probably already left. Sometimes not, but if you see a colony like this, you definitely need to split. And by the way, splitting out the frames with just the queen cells on them and some bees won't make them not swarm. You've got to, once you get to this point, you got to find the old queen and move her to a new box if you want them not to swarm. And there's too many swarm cells in here. So notice that there's swarm cells. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 on that one. And then there's 1, 2, 3 on the one, 2 over. And then there's actually 1 on the other one in the middle. So how many splits could I make off of this?
3 frames. Are there 3 frames with
There's 3 frames with
potentially 3?
kind of a trick question. The answer in the room is 3. Does anyone online have a different answer? It depends on how many bees you have. That's true. And how much equipment you have. Yes, exactly. And so you can make a split with the queen, the original queen, if she's still in there. You can make a split with this frame, each of those frames that have larvae or queen cells on it. So that's 4. And then if you have frames with eggs, you can make more. So the answer is it depends on how many bees and how many frames and how much equipment you have. The possibilities are almost limitless if you have a really strong producing hive. But then again, you're sacrificing your honey production in order to make that. There's no right answer. It's really just your preference. All right, and so moving along to honey storage, if you think about wet nectar versus honey, honey only has about 18% water in it by the time they cap it. that nectar that they're bringing back is a lot wetter than that. So it takes up a lot more volume. Once they dehydrate it, then it takes up less space. It's kind of like me trying to make spaghetti sauce the other day out of tomatoes. It took like 6 hours to keep boiling it till the steam comes off, and then I've got half as much as I started with. Same concept. So you'll probably read about checkerboarding. This is an example of checkerboarding a honey super. It's literally a checkerboard of old frames and new frames. Think three-dimensionally, like in Star Trek. You can, your next box up would have the frames opposite. So you'd have the built comb in position 10 and an empty in position 10 on the next one up. And in 9, you would have an empty and then a full. So you cross it over, and it absolutely drives the bees nuts. And they don't like to leave a house that's untidy. So that will help to slow down the swarming urge. If you've got a really super populous colony that keeps putting queen cups on the bottom each week, you look, you're like, again, this will slow them down. But then again, the trade-off, what's the trade-off to putting frames with no wax in there versus frames that are all drawn with wax? They have to build the frames out with wax, therefore I get less honey. So again, trade-offs. Don't do this with your brood box. They really don't like that. You can put a couple of empty frames in there, but don't go every other one. That does the opposite, and it will make them say, this place sucks. This beekeeper is driving me crazy and we're going to go somewhere else. And they'll be more likely to swarm. All right. I think I've made this pretty clear. Should I feed 1-to-1 syrup with my supers on? If you need wax and you're not selling your honey, go for it. If they'll take it, go for it. You'll read online, people will flagellate me for this. Never, ever, ever do that. Well, if you get a little bit of sucrose and water honey instead of nectar honey, it tastes good too. You just can't sell it. Makes a really light flavored honey, actually. So if you get a little bit of that in your supers, it's not the end of the world. If you're seeing that all your wax is drawn and they're starting to pack in, and if for some reason they're still taking the syrup, then go ahead and stop. But until you've got all your wax, just keep feeding them as long as they'll take it. And that way you'll get more wax. All right, and then people always ask me about queen excluders, so I have a quick word on queen excluders. I don't recommend them the first 2 or 3 years you're keeping bees because it complicates the space issue. It restricts the queen into those boxes that are below there, and it makes it more complex for you to stay ahead of that swarming urge because she can fill those boxes up with either brood, or they'll fill it up with honey, and then they'll be brood bound and they'll swarm. If you have space, if you don't use a queen excluder, they'll move honey so that the queen can move up. So I don't recommend it. If you do decide to use queen excluders, there's 2 different kinds. It's kind of hard to see in the picture, but the one on the left-hand side, the openings go the same direction as the frames. The other ones are cheaper. They're usually plastic, but the openings go perpendicular to the frames, and it makes it harder for the bees to get through the holes. They tend to fill those with propolis and don't go through there. So that's why I don't recommend those. If you're going to use queen excluders, spend a little extra money and get the ones where the openings go the same direction as the frames do.
Well, later in the year, they probably backfill it anyway, and you'd be fine if they lit up into your super.
Well, unless the queen gets stuck up there.
Yeah.
The queen gets stuck up there, then they'll swarm because there's not enough space, and then your whole empty,
I'm
they'll,
saying you skip the big excluder altogether.
yeah.
And they lay up into your super, and then that's all right for backfill.
Yeah, so the question is, if they lay up into your super, which is just a human derived super, right? They don't see it as different. If they lay up into the super, no big deal. Then as they backfill all that, as soon as the brood emerges, then they'll backfill that with honey and force the queen down. The question in the room is, when will they start backfilling that? And it just really depends on how much nectar there is and how much space they need. And I've seen them, when I've used queen excluders before, I'll have fully drawn honey supers that I'll put on some colonies, and they'll say, nope, we don't want to do that, even though I've got upper entrances so they could go right in, and they fill all the brood space with honey instead. They're like, no, we don't want that. So queen excluders do make it a lot more complex. All right, and that's it for my slides. Does anyone online have any questions? I'll stop sharing so I can see the chat too.
Can I add something in real quick, Tracy? You were
Please,
talking
Dawn.
about, talking about wax building. The American Beekeeping Journal, American Bee Journal came out. I got mine today. And there's an article in there by Tom Seeley called How a Colony's Workers Know When to Start Building Comb. And you could probably look it up online, Tom Seeley. I'll put it in chat. How a Colony's Workers Know When to Start Building Comb. It is the best article I've ever read for kind of comprehensive what triggers wax building in bees. And I also shared it out to our Facebook groups, to Puget Sound and to Western Washington.
So in case people in the room here couldn't hear that, the American Bee Journal has a great article on when colonies start building wax, and Dawn shared the article on the Puget Sound Beekeepers Facebook page and also on Western Washington Beekeepers.
Yep.
Thanks, Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments online? That was so awesome. No one has any questions? That never happens. All right, Peter.
Okay. I'll come talk behind you.
Here.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yep.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We are going to take a short break. We're having some minor technological issues at the moment that will hopefully be resolved in the next 15 minutes when we are ready to start the full meeting. So I will give all of the club announcements when we start the full meeting in about 15 minutes. People who are here in the room, grab some snacks, chat, do your things, ask Tracy more questions because she's here. If you're online, please chat amongst yourselves and enjoy, and we will get back together in about 15 minutes. Thank you all. Unmute. Hello and good evening, everyone. Can everyone see? One second. Can everyone see the presentation who's online? Anyone online? Can you see the presentation, the slides?
Yes, it says May meeting 25.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Puget Sound Beekeepers Association meeting for May. I believe that is this month. And those of you who already heard Tracy give her presentation, thank you all so much for coming. Tracy, thank you so much for doing the beginner's lesson for us. The Puget Sound Beekeepers Association was founded in 1948. So yeah, we've been around for a while. We exist to promote common interest in general welfare and beekeeping, protect honeybees, educate beekeepers, encourage good bee management practices, not bad management practices, and to encourage good relations between beekeepers and the public. Again, thank you, Tracy. Our 2025 officers, I am the president, Peter Nolte. Vice president is Magali Eaton, who may be online. I haven't actually seen the full list yet. Treasurer Bruce Becker, Colleen Duville is our secretary, and our president ex officio is Dawn Beck, who I believe is online. I heard her name earlier. We also have a bunch of trustees, probably both online and in person. If you are an online trustee, please go ahead and press the hand raise button so people can identify you. If you're a trustee in the room, go ahead and just raise your hand and wave so everyone also can identify you. These are your trustees. They want to help you and PSBA become better. Feel free to talk to us, ask us questions, all of those sorts of things. We have I think maybe first ever that PSBA has ever done extractor demo day. We have some honey frames from the apiary here at the Arboretum from our apiary here that need to be extracted. So Kathleen suggested that we could do a demo day for people who may not know how to extract their honey that they will hopefully be getting off of the blackberry flow and wanting to extract in the next month or so. So on May 31st from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we're going to have an extractor demo day at Rainy Day Bees in Shoreline. You're going to learn how to extract honey using radial and tangential extractors. It is actually a single extractor, but it can extract both ways. It'll be similar to the extractors that you may be able to rent through PSBA. Not the same, but similar. And you're going to get, if you come to this extractor demo day, you're going to get to experience everything. You're going to extract honey frames. You're going to put them in. We're going to spin them. We're going to get some honey out. I think Kathleen said we might even have some jars there, and we're going to jar the honey as well as it comes out of the extractor. It's going to be lots of fun. And we will also test the honey for its water content using a refractometer to ensure that that honey is fully cured and will not be fermenting on us.
Send us information on that, or will be on your name.
And now, I should have included this link or the actual physical link as well. The physical link was really long. Here's a QR code. So if you are online or in person, you should hopefully be able to, I'm going to move that so it's not interfering with the QR code. You can click on that QR code. It's going to take you to the registration page. And if you cannot click on that QR code for whatever reason, just go to PugetSoundBees.org and click on the calendar. And it is right there on the calendar for May 31st. Pre-registration is required for this event. So please don't just show up at my facility in Shoreline. Make sure you register first. Okay, cool. Thank you all. Look forward to seeing you. Is there enough parking? There are parking instructions on the website, I believe. Just it is street parking. Be respectful of my neighbors. Please, 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 please. One more button. That button. As always, PSBA is looking for volunteers. There's a QR code so you can sign up to volunteer for other events that we have coming up. Don't know off the top of my head what those are, but always looking for volunteers to help out with things. Nancy, do we have anything major coming up? Or Kat? Anyone? Chomp? We have Chomp coming up. And we would love to have you there helping out. In August. Chomp is, Nancy, do you want to, or Kip?
Yeah. Learning how to grow our food. And it's huge. It's that narrow and it gets bigger every year and it's very organized and they love having us. You can probably have fourth year, some say started, which would mean that they were on during the pandemic, which I think I can't remember.
What day in August?
Sorry.
What day in August?
I think it's the 16th. It's all, they have a big old website, and if you, we also have on the calendar, you can look for opportunities to volunteer and that they will show. We've had 3 events prior to now, but of course now we have CHOMP. And so you can always go to SwedenTownBees.org and look at the calendar and touch the calendar link and go to register. From there, I have your email address and I can send you follow-up information where to park, so I can be there. And that always works really well. If you don't do that, you can give me your information right now. Okay.
So what the website I see one thing was through the summer. Other than there's the monthly meeting and then.
The shop and then is only.
It's the only thing on the
here,
calendar.
then we have apiary work days.
They are on the calendar, but I can.
They may not, be like, they may
That's
not, but
Okay.
They are on count.
Or are they?
Yeah,
Oh, I just.
unless you're sorting by.
I'm just looking at.
One of us can look at it with you in a bit and try to make sure that you're seeing what we need to see. Awesome. And also you should be able to click on just the general volunteer link. Neighborhood captains. We've been getting some awesome questions from members, some of which are going directly to officers, some of which are going other places. But I do want to point out that we do have our neighborhood captains program. This is PSBA's version of mentoring currently. And essentially, we have people who have volunteered all across the city to field your questions about beekeeping. They may even be willing to have you come over and, do a little bit of beekeeping with them if you want a little extra hands-on time and one-on-one mentorship. They most likely will not be able to come out to your beehives to help you with your beehives. That's not part of the job. But they're more than happy to field your questions, look at photos, those sorts of things, and try to help you figure out what's going on. That's what they're there for. Thank you all so much. That QR code, of course, and link is available. Hopefully everyone has already registered their apiary for the year, but if you have not, apiary registration is required. It was due by April 1st, but if you have not, if you started late or forgot, it happens. The late registration penalties are absolutely minimal. If you're a hobbyist with like 1 to 5 hives, basic registration is $5. Your late fee is probably a dime or something like that. So really just register your bees. It is required. It also provides you with civil liability protection as long as you are following all beekeeping laws and are registered, which is also a beekeeping law. So definitely register. The money also goes to Wazoo for bee research. So yes.
So I registered 2 hives and then I caught my hive swarm and I caught it and I now have 3. Do I have to go back and tell them that I have 3 or how does that work?
I would not correct that for that. You're still within the minimum. Yeah, it's 0 to 5 is what you've paid for. So yeah, for if you're
Sure how like exactly they had. Because I thought it was
yeah. I would not worry about that particular change personally. I of course am not speaking for the state when I say that. One more question in the back.
So it's update. Cause I am gonna leave my class in place.
Sorry, you're moving your hives or you're moving your personal address? Both. The state does not care where your beehives are. You are registering as a beekeeper, not your hives. Your hives are not actually being registered because large beekeepers keep their bees in, dozens of different locations throughout the state, potentially. They're only doing a single registration for themselves as a beekeeper, not all of their individual apiaries. As far as your own personal address is concerned, the only thing I would say is to, try to contact the WSDA Plant Protection Division. There is an email address on the registration form or on the website that leads to the registration form, at least. Try to let them know through that. If they don't respond, honestly, I don't think they care that much about where you live, as long as you're registered. That was my last slide. I do have two more fast announcements. If you are here in person at the Grand Visitors Center, two people brought some extra bee equipment to donate to all of us. So please feel free to go up to the front of the room. I see an extractor there. I don't know what all else is present, but head on up to the front of the room. If you're interested in anything, it's all free for the taking. And if you can use it, please take it and enjoy. Quentin or Matthew, any other things you want to say about that? If it's not taken today, it's gone to Goodwill. So if you can use it, please, please, please take it. Last announcement, just really quickly, for our June meeting, which will be our last meeting before our summer picnic in July. For our June meeting, I will be doing a talk about, I'm still determining the name of the, stop sharing the screen because you don't need to be looking at a black screen. I am going to be doing a talk about kind of the economics and fun and everything else of having a small beekeeping business. So if you've ever thought that you might want to sell your honey or sell bees, or are just curious how on earth you would even do that if someone were crazy enough to want to do that, those are the sorts of things that I'm going to be talking about. I think I'm going to try to make it very narrative and fun, but also be informative so that if anyone is wanting to sell their honey or do other things, they will know how to do it legally and have fun doing it, hopefully. That is my announcements for today, which brings us to our next point, which is our spring beekeeping panel. We've got 4 panelists here today with us in the audience. I'm going to go from left to right. On the left, Paul and Pat, would you just wave your hands and see if the owl will zoom in on you a bit? Hopefully the owl will zoom in on you and stop paying quite as much attention to everyone else. Was that its sound? Okay, Paul and Pat, would you talk loudly? Okay, well, it should zoom in on them a little bit. I may have them move in a little bit closer as well. But Paul and Pat Perkins of Seattle Urban Honey have been members of PSBA for a long time. Long time. They founded Seattle Urban Honey. They have been selling their honey at the University District Farmers Market, at the Finney Farmers Market, at Lake City Farmers Market, and several small stores at different times, doing all sorts of cool stuff. They've had hives in people's backyards. They currently have hives at the Center for Urban Horticulture out in farmland in Falls City. They're a great small beekeeping business here in the Seattle area that I personally love to chat with. Tracy Klein, our beginner's lesson teacher, who is also master beekeeper and is always a joy to listen to. Tracy Tracy's been working with Kathy Cox for a number of years. She raises her own queens, raises bees, does lots and lots and lots of other stuff, and is an absolutely wonderful beekeeper. And then finally, our final panelist is Kathleen. I'm totally blanking on your last name, sorry. DeVilbus, Kathleen DeVilbus. Kathleen is our apiary manager here at PSBA. She is also a newer beekeeper. I'm going to let all of these panelists do a little bit more of an introduction of themselves as well, since I'm sure, butchered all of them. But I specifically chose these three, I'm going to say, groups of panelists. We've got Paul and Pat, or a single group, and then Tracy, and then Kathleen, because I thought they made a great cross-section of the beekeeping community. We've got the small beekeeping company, we've got the master beekeeper, and we've got the newer beekeeper who has had a lot of experience with bees since she started beekeeping as the apiary since she's the apiary manager here. I had a similar crash course in beekeeping myself when I started. So anyway, Paul and Pat, would you like to just finish off the introduction of yourselves if there's anything you'd like to add or correct from what I said?
Well, we started in '88 and started younger. Went off to college and went to architecture school. And in architecture school, they had a project with the students where they were to show off painting and tools in Chicago. So they used the Chicago Painting Pool as a model. They learned about hives, they learned about what the needs were, for beekeepers, what a honey house is like, what the requirements are for way that handle honey well. And so he says to us, you guys gotta do this. You guys gotta do lots somehow. And so we did. And her sibling, she bought beekeeping lessons and and we told the neighbors about it, and he, from the time she came, and you know, kind of an unstarted long operation, just don't go bees, and here we had our neighbor kind of lined up on that thing. And probably 2 weeks later, also comes back there. You're gonna find it, right? Where are the bees? We just need to, you know, bee, you know, I can't bee. So I got my wife into flying on jet too. And the end of the year, we were told the first lesson we had was going to start getting game first together. We had to extract like London City up here pretty Alabama, no. And we ended up with a gold wall jar of floating. When you look at that, let me know what life she did. Oh, the world can eat all. So you don't go to the penny farmer going, the beekeeper there said, that's for some good signs. Be gone for the reason. But the managers some in. So that's how we got started. And that beekeeper being left. Should tell you this end of the year, again, see it, you know, penny farmer climbing doesn't go on years. And like furniture or acquiring it now. Very cool, man. Well, it's on my here we get the next time. I didn't wear that most shirt. I didn't know what working. That's created in the skin. And every five, then we made higher service next year. And that's something I've done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. For people online, could I yep, that's what I was just going to ask, is whether we were loud enough here. Panelists, we were a little bit quiet, so could we move a little bit closer to the owl and the microphone? And then also, I am going to ask us to speak up a little bit more as we're able to do so. Thank you, Deborah, for mentioning that in the chat. see, and I actually.
This way.
Okay, are you okay, Paul? I mean, we're fine as long as you don't have too much light in your eyes. Okay, thank you. Tracy, would you like to correct my introduction of you? Let us know.
For that, when I was a kid, playing, it was fine, and we our cabin around the canal, discovered that cabbage grew. Yes, pretty see bees around here. Bees. Then I got the bug, I got the one calling her 2, 4, and then married them and shut up. So I think about 40